I've watched the Thunderbolts movie multiple times. I absolutely love it. And then I had this idea. What would it look like if the Thunderbolts were added into Marvel Rivals? Can we come up with interesting movesets for these anti-heroes? Or would they be too similar to already existing characters? And also, how would they function as a team composition? I thought it would be very fun to theory craft their movesets, but before we begin, I want to make 3 things clear. Firstly, I am not a game designer. I'm not going to throw out exact damage numbers or cooldown timings. I will simply be making a moveset and trying to describe how powerful my hypothetical moveset would be. Secondly, I do not think the Thunderbolts should be added to Marvel Rivals. Marvel Rivals has been based on all things Marvel, mostly focusing on comics. While a lot of characters have appeared in the MCU before, it is not 100% MCU, and NetEase should not add characters simply because they were in a successful MCU movie. Now that being said, the movesets I come up with are heavily based on the MCU simply because my knowledge of Marvel is heavily based on the MCU. Lastly, there is a tiny amount of spoilers specifically about one character, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, there's your spoiler warning. Let's get into our first character, which is Yelena. Yelena, in my eyes, fights very similarly to Black Widow. Now, Black Widow uses a sniper rifle, so we have all of what Black Widow does and all of what Yelena does to take as inspiration. In my moveset, Yelena would be a close to mid-range fighter that has many tools and many abilities to use. She would have 2 main basic attacks. A close-range melee attack using her batons. The auto attack would keep her close to her opponent, similar to Iron Fist, but not nearly as dramatic, so she can't just chase them across the sky. She would also have a medium-range basic attack using pistols. Nothing special, just medium damage, a can headshot. It would be slightly worse than what Star-Lord has. The unique aspects of her kit would come from her abilities, the first of which is a stun bracelet. This ability would have 3 to 4 charges that can be used in 2 different ways. The first option is to use 1 charge to shoot a small electronic projectile that deals minimal damage but pauses an opponent for a tiny amount of time. It would be like bzzzt, and about that long maybe shorter. Now, I say pause, not stun. It won't cancel ultimates, it won't stop enemy abilities, it just stops their momentum for a tiny bit of time, kind of like when Thor uses his dash ability to carry enemies away. The second option to use this ability would require and consume all charges of this ability. It does the same effect, except it's a longer duration that does stun enemies, so it would allow her to cancel ultimates and abilities like so many other CC moves can. Her next ability would be something simple, a grappling hook. She would shoot a short-range grappling hook very much like Moon Knight's. It wouldn't launch her into the air, it would just pull her to that destination or pull her to the enemy. It would not pull the enemy towards her like Spider-Man can, it would simply pull her to the enemy, and then maybe stun them for a short duration. Her final ability would be a disarming strike, a melee attack that prevents the enemy from using their basic attack for a short time, maybe like 1 to 2 seconds. They could still use their other abilities and they can still move around, but they cannot do the auto attack or whatever their basic attacks are. Finally, I wanted to come up with ultimate abilities for all of these characters, but I couldn't think of one for Yelena specifically, so I'm just gonna say she copies Bucky Barnes, but instead of saying, again, she just screams, ah! Ah! Something stupid like that. In reality, maybe she would have some sort of stunning ability for her ultimate. But overall, she would be a close to mid-range fighter that is trying to disarm and stop the opponents and control the pace of the battle. The next character I want to go over is Bucky Barnes, which is already in the game, so I'm just going to skip this. The next character I want to go over is Ghost. Ghost would be a medium-ranged fighter that is very mobile and could flank very easily as she can go through walls. Her primary weapon would be an energy blast of phasing powers. I didn't want everything to be simply punching and using guns like in the movie, but that would be too boring. So this one is like a projectile weapon that she can shoot. She has one main ability that lets her move through most environments. It does not phase through the ground or let her go out of bounds. It just lasts a short amount of time that lets her move through any destructible or any buildings that are in the way. When her phasing time runs out, if she is still in a wall, she will take continuous damage until she gets out of it, and it might kill her. A passive ability Ghost would have would be phasing. When Ghost would get stunned or crowd controlled or moved, she automatically phases out and ignores the stun or crowd control completely. And then her passive ability would go on a cooldown. That would be like, 20 seconds or something. So the first crowd control that hits Ghost would be neutralized. It's a little bit more powerful than the Thing's main ability, except it's only a one-time use every so often. The Thing can be stunned, but can't be moved. Ghost can't be stunned or moved or anything one time, and then she needs to let it cool down. Her ultimate ability, which I've named Ghost Control, shoots out in front of Ghost, and all opponents in that area would be attacked by Ghost, and Ghost would phase them out and lock them into the ground, locking them in place for a few seconds until the enemies eventually get out of the earth. Enemies can shoot and use non-movement abilities while locked down, but they can't move, so it would kind of be like a lock everything in place and then your team can take them out. Also, Yelena would be a DPS, and Ghost would be a DPS. Bucky is already a DPS. John Walker, as we know, would be another DPS. So for John Walker, I wanted him to be a melee character that is similar to Captain America with some key differences, focusing on John Walker's anger and ruthlessness in fighting over Captain America's survivability. So, for John Walker, you would follow what Captain America has with these changes. You would have lower health and slightly higher damage. He does not have unlimited sprint. He does not have defensive shield ability, and he does not have his shield bash ability. Instead, he has situational sprint based off of damage taken, he has an extra shield throw for a more aggressive attack, and he has a knockback ability that launches enemies slightly away from John and slows them down. For the situational sprint, he has this mechanic called Anger, which is similar to Wolverine's Rage mechanic. When John takes or deals damage, it increases his speed slightly. At max anger, he is as fast as Captain America while sprinting, but he can also attack. Now, he will only get to this speed if he has continually stayed in a fight for a long time, as his anger/speed depreciates very quickly. Now, I understand that this can easily be broken, but I wanted to point out that Walker does not have as much health as Captain America, and he does not have the ability to hold up his shield to block incoming damages. So he will not survive as long as Cap can. He will need to retreat and get out. He's a fast, aggressive character that can't stay in the backline as long as Captain America can, but he can do more damage. His ultimate is, "I am Captain America." His line that he says to the court when he gets his titles stripped away. This ultimate mimics Captain America's ultimate, but instead of extra health, it gives extra damage and movement speed, making him and his team even more aggressive. Now we have two more characters, but so far, all of the characters I have described have been in the DPS category. Red Guardian is a support. Now hear me out. The Red Guardian, in Black Widow and in Thunderbolts, seems to be a team player, and I think it would be cool to have a tanky healer that does low damage and low healing. You would have about 400 to 450 health, making him the highest health non-tank character. He would have limited movement abilities, only one ability that dashes forward and deals small amounts of damage to enemy, and he would have this ability where every time the Red Guardian uses his primary attack or his dash, when it hits an enemy, teammates around him get a small amount of health back. This does not include himself though. So, he as a healer would rely on other healers to heal himself, and he would want a lot of close range fighters that stick together as a group to get as much healing as he can. His ultimate would be Thunderbolts! This ultimate ability is a purely selfish healing ability. I don't want to add another ultimate that just makes the entire team unkillable. So what this ultimate does, it doubles his current and maximum HP. His ultimate also applies a low self-heal per second, but it can be out-damaged. So it will make him hard to kill, but if everybody focuses him down, they can out-damage his healing. And while this ultimate is active, his melee attacks heal teammates further away from him. Last minute addition, Pom Pom gave a hilarious suggestion for Red Guardian. His ult could be him driving a limo around that keeps teammates safe and damages the opponents. It could, allow the team to get back to the objective quickly and safely. Maybe the teammates could shoot guns out of the side of the limo. I don't know. but this would be like the most ridiculous ult in the game, but I feel like that's kind of the point. Anyway, let's continue. Now, I've never played Overwatch, and I understand there was a tank added to Overwatch, like named Bridget or something, and she was like a support that was super tanky, and she dominated the meta because it wasn't balanced at all. And this probably sounds very similar to that, but this is a hypothetical, and the numbers aren't exact. I would hope that they would make it balanced and fair if they were to add this to the game, which, again, there is no reason to believe they will. It's just what I would want it to be, maybe. Final spoiler warning, this is probably the most spoiler part of this video. Last but not least, we have the Sentry. Sentry would be a Vanguard and would be very, very powerful. He has a decent health pool for a tank, just an average health, not the most, not the least, and he would be the first flying Vanguard. He can't move super fast, he doesn't have many ways to speed up, but he does have a passive ability that makes it so he takes less damage when he is not using abilities or attacking. Would kind of showcase the fact that he just can't be hit, and it's really difficult for anybody to fight him. But when he is attacking somebody, they have a chance to land some hits. And this is important because his primary ability would be a melee attack. The melee would be decent punches, probably as strong as Hulk's, and every time he lands a punch, he gains movement speed. This does not stack, so you can't get Ultra Super Saiyan, but just it increases his speed when he is attacking, making it easier for him to follow enemies. Now, he would have one main ability that I've come up with, which slows/attracts opponents in towards him, kind of like the Storm ult. And so it would make enemies easier to follow, easier to lock down, and make it easier for your teammates to hit them. Overall, I would build Sentry so that he is slightly overpowered, but not absolutely busted. And then his ultimate ability would theoretically balance out this powerful base moveset, because his ultimate ability is Void. And once his ultimate is charged, it automatically gets used within 3 to 5 seconds of it charging. So he doesn't have a choice. He must use his ultimate when he gets it. And once he does, he turns into the Void and deals constant damage in a large area around him to all players, teammates included. It lasts a large amount of time, like 7 to, 12 seconds, and during which enemies and allies can deal damage to him, and he cannot be healed. If enough damage is dealt, Void respawns at the spawn room immediately, so there's not like a 9-second delay between spawning, it's just he teleports back to spawn, as the Sentry. If the ultimate naturally ends, he is stunned for a short time, and he heals back to full health. And so, this ultimate, while it does deal damage to opponents, it will hurt your teammates. It ultimately isn't that good of an ult, and you must use it. I understand that this might make the character just really not fun to play, and ultimately, I have no idea if any of these characters would be fun to play. I don't know. I just wanted to come up with an interesting moveset that I think might be fun, but I could be wrong. Now let's talk about this team as a whole. Overall, if all of these characters were added into the game, it would be a very aggressive team. The Red Guardian and Sentry would both be like the biggest tanks of the team, and ultimately all of the characters would be fighting mid to close range, and so they would hopefully be together, which probably would make them very vulnerable to group ultimates. But we would have some heavy hitters like John Walker and Bucky, and Ghost, Bucky, and Yelena all would have abilities to kind of lock down the opponents and move them around, stun them with Yelena's stun abilities. And John Walker could increase the damage, Red Guardian could keep everybody healed up if they're all working together, and then Sentry would turn into the Void and kill all of the Thunderbolts. Just the normal Thunderbolts stuff. Ultimately, I would like to know what you guys think. Do you think that I should never become a game designer and that this is all terrible and garbage? Or do you think some of these sound kind of fun? Like the most interesting one to me would probably be Red Guardian. I would love to have a tanky support in the game that is kind of a mixture of support and tank. After that, I don't know. This is just kind of a idea I had that I wanted to see through. If you haven't seen Thunderbolts yet, I would recommend watching it. I think it's an absolutely amazing Marvel movie. You don't really need to watch all of the other series that the characters are from in order to understand it. It's kind of a good jumping in point. And it's just a good movie. And it's, not that long. It's like 2 hours and 7 minutes. Most movies are at least 2.5 now. So it's kind of nice for it to just be a little bit shorter. Anyways, I'll be making a video talking about the Thunderbolts soon, if you're interested in the Thunderbolts. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you subscribe if you liked it. Have a nice day.